All right, I think we have it under control here. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the PhD Dissertation Forum. And we're really excited here because this is going to be the first time it's offered at IV, and hopefully this will turn into a nice experience that everyone can walk away from and do it again next year. So just real quickly, the committee members are made up of Dr. Shinko Chang, Tao Dang, I should be Dr. Tao Dang, and Dr. Brendan Morris as well. And I'll pass it over to Shinko here, who's going to say just a couple words real quickly before we introduce the forum, jury panel, excuse me.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to extend my welcome to you as well to this PhD forum. My name is Shinko Chang. I was a former student of Professor Mohan Trivedi here at UC San Diego at the LISA, Laboratory for Intelligent and Safe Automobiles. I wanted to tell you a couple of things. My dissertation was focused on driver understanding. More specifically, it was about modeling driver behavior, driver pose, developing driver assistance systems, making use of that information. One of the things that came out of that effort was a technique that relies on human driver head and hand motion to predict whether or not the driver was intending to make an intersection turn. I'm currently at the HRL continuing on with this work. And the other thing I wanted to share with you today was I wanted to tell you about the IEEE ITS PhD Dissertation Award. It's an award established to encourage doctoral research that combines theory and practice, having the potential to contribute to its ITS society, broaden the ITS topic areas in either the methodological or application perspectives. It has been a great recognition for us, for my work as well as the work done at the LISA lab. And after reading each one of the abstracts for the PhD forum today, I sincerely believe that each presenter's work has the potential to also be ITS Society's best dissertation. So I encourage each of you to have your work be considered for the award. The selection process starts May of each year, and more information is available on the web with the search terms ITSS Award. And if you will allow me, I'd like to share with you some advice that I had received when I was a PhD grad student. Have an unsolved problem ready to think about at any time, because there will be moments of downtime between our day-to-day activities in which we can make a difference in this world by just thinking about them. And with that, I hand it back to Brendan. Thank you.
Thank you, Shinko. So we have a very distinguished group of jury members who are sitting in the front row here. We have Professor Dan Daly from the University of Washington, and we have Professor Klaus Dittmeyer from the University of Ulm, Dr. Uwe Franke from Daimler or Mercedes, and Professor Sergio Nevetsky from Technical University of Cluj-Napoca. And we have Professor Feiyu Wang, who apparently is still en route. So right now we have 4, and hopefully he'll be able to show up and join us in a little bit. So just a little bit about the way we're going to run it. We have the schedule is inside this booklet here, which hopefully everybody got. We have a couple extra just in case you didn't, and it'll give you the breakdown of who the speakers will be. And it's going to be a packed schedule, so we're going to try to keep it very crisp and concise. And so that means we get 10 minutes per speaker. That includes questions, and we're going to leave the questions first to the jury and then open it up if there is time to anybody in the audience. So with that said, I think we can begin. And the first person we have is Ashish Agrawal. So thank you. And let's see, they're supposed to do it for us, but let's see. Sorry, I forgot real quickly, just so you guys know over here. I'm going to give a 5-minute warning and a 2-minute warning. And then after the time is up, I will cut you off. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Morris. My name is Ashish Agrawal, and I recently completed my dissertation, and the topic is analytical modeling of delay-tolerant data dissemination in vehicular networks. So what is this about? I don't know if you've noticed this ever, but if a oncoming car is flashing its lights, it usually means that there's a cop up ahead, and you should be careful going there. So this is an example of, this is the motivation behind my work, and here a vehicle has sensed a dangerous situation, which is a cop up ahead on the road, and it has stored and carried forward this information and then relayed it to this car over here. So that was the starting motivation, and what we deal with is vehicular communication, and this coincides with NSF's vision of creating a transportation cyber-physical infrastructure, which means vehicles and infrastructure are equipped, and then they can communicate. And we're also looking at traffic information services, how you can implement them. And we're applying a new, relatively novel technique, which is delay-tolerant communication. So the idea is that using multi-hop and store and carry forward, data can be relayed to other nodes in the network. So the challenges that we identified are data dissemination and network conditions that are specifically different models of communication. Different applications have different requirements. For example, safety is delay critical, and traffic information services are not so. And then the most important thing is time-varying partitioning. So as I show in this example, this vehicle is disconnected to vehicles that are on the same side of the roadway, eastbound, and also disconnected to vehicles that are oncoming on the westbound side of the roadway. But this is a time-varying partitioning in the network, which means that when these vehicles move forward, this vehicle will potentially be connected to this vehicle. So we want to exploit this. So in these terms, we want to find out how do you do the routing and what is the corresponding performance. So for that, we developed an analytical model. I won't go into the details, but the idea is that at a time instant t equal to 0, the network is partitioned or disconnected. But at time t equal to delta, after some time, vehicles align in this manner, and this vehicle is able to connect to vehicles further up ahead on the roadway by virtue of multi-hop connectivity. So there are two phases of data dissemination. Phase 1 is disconnected, where vehicles are disconnected, and phase 2 is when they're connected. So we analytically model these conditions, and what we compute is the average propagation speed. So the idea is that the way vehicles flow on the roadway with some speed, we want to compute what is the rate of data flow, and we model this as the average message propagation speed in terms of meters per second on the roadway. So we have some mathematics behind that. So quickly presenting the results, we model the average propagation speed with vehicle density, and since an exact derivation is difficult to achieve, what we model is the upper bound and lower bound, and then a corresponding approximation based on these bounds, and we compare with our simulation results. Now these simulation results are done in MATLAB by generating real traffic conditions. So we take a parameterized model, and the model is parameterized for vehicle density and radio parameters. So what we observe here is that from 0 to 10 vehicles per kilometer, the network is sparsely connected. So in networking terminology, it is partitioned, and it is trivial to show that there is no performance in terms of data dissemination. At the other extreme, when we consider, say, about 100 vehicles per kilometer, the network is very dense, and in terms of network terminology, it is fully connected. So, so it is trivial to note that the performance will be the maximum achieved by the radio, which is parametrically, here it is 1,000 meters per second. It can be different for different radio models. But the key here is that this is a phase transition behavior. So the transition is that the network is sparse, from sparse to connected. And in many schemes that are based on path formation strategies, there is a critical density at which this transformation takes place. So for path-based strategies, this is at a very high level, and I can show that analytically in different results. But for a delay-tolerant networking technique, which is exploiting the time-varying partitioning in the network, the critical density behavior is shown by this curve. So that was the average message propagation speed. Correspondingly, we can study the average delay per kilometer. So what is the delay in delivering a packet? So here, if you say C per kilometer, then when the network is disconnected, the vehicle employs a store and carry forwarding scheme. So it actually carries the data over a kilometer. So trivially, it is 50 seconds. But when the network is connected, we are able to exploit multi-hop network connectivity, and the data gets to its destination faster. The interesting observation is these intermediate densities where excuse me, where the time-varying partitioning is exploited. Now, we model this as vehicle density, but this can also be viewed as the penetration rate of the technology. So what percentage of vehicles are equipped, and how well can you exploit multi-hop connectivity in the network? So the third main result in my dissertation was the density regimes. Now, in terms of density regimes, as I mentioned, there's a critical density at which the network transitions from a fully connected network to a from a disconnected to a fully connected network. The densities at which this transformation takes place is hard to compute. So in our result, we show that based on our upper bound, lower bound, and approximation curves, there is a regime 3 where there are definite gains achieved from exploiting multi-hop connectivity. Then there is regime 1 where there are no gains that can be achieved from multi-hop connectivity, and this is trivially so because the vehicle density on either side of the roadway is very low. So we're not able to exploit the multi-hop connectivity in the network. The unknown quantity is the regime 2, where there are sometimes gains achieved and sometimes there are no gains achieved. So we cannot really say much about that. So this graph is basically showing, with respect to densities on either side of the roadway, for what value of density, what kind of performance will be achieved. So the final result that we discuss is that what is the average message propagation speed with respect to increasing vehicle speed. So here we note that as vehicle speed increases, the message propagation speed increases. Now the idea behind this result is that as vehicles travel faster, they're traveling in two different directions. So they're connecting faster, so your average message propagation speed increases. But important here to note is that an increase from 0 to 20 meters per second in vehicle speed achieves a corresponding increase from 0 to 400 meters per second in the message propagation speed. Now this result is contrary to MANE or mobile ad hoc networking technique expectations, where increasing speed will lead to increasing disconnections in the network and correspondingly a drop in performance because the idea is that the paths that are formed are very short-lived and there'll be frequent disconnections. But in our store and carry forward scheme, what we're observing is that instead of a decrease, there is a corresponding increase. Now there's an underlying assumption behind this result, which is that we are able to exploit connectivity over bidirectional traffic. So we extend this result for placement of access points or infrastructure in the network. And the idea is that what if you had access points placed intermittently in the network, then what would be the corresponding performance? So on these curves, we show the MANE or pathway schemes that are employed. And on these curves, we show the delay-tolerant networking techniques. So again, this result is showing that delay-tolerant networking technique does better because it is able to exploit the time-varying partitioning. Whereas a MANE scheme would not be able to function in this density region because there is no path from the source and destination, from the source to the destination potentially. Thank you.
Okay, so we have just a little bit of time for questions. If you have questions.
Well, thank you very much for this interesting presentation. How did you verify your mathematic models?
So the models were verified with simulations. So we simulated cars on the roadway and correspondingly the network connectivity. So when you correlate the two, it turns out that the simulation model is close to the analytical model.
Okay, the question was because we saw speed up to 100 meters per second.
Right. So that was that result was based on the analytical model, and of course that is not a realistic. But that was completely an analytical result. But even then, from 0 to 20 meters per second.
Do you have any deterministic timing concept in it? You told us that one application is time critical things, and the delays of such multi-hopping system, is it deterministic in your system? I assume not.
No, so this is a probabilistic probabilistic method. What I was referring to was my work on investigating different applications. So that was safety critical applications are not served by this directly. So this is more of a store and forward scheme. This is more for traffic information services kind of applications.
Okay.
Not for safety critical, certainly.
So I have a question. What about the volume of exchanged information?
We did not consider that. We assumed that we did not model the volume of data that was exchanged.
You mentioned some critical time, critical delay. So if the volume of information is growing, then...
Right. So when the volume of information grows, then the delay will start increasing. We did not model that in this work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move on to Rex Chen from University of California, Irvine.
Hi, I'm Rex Chen. I'm from the University of California, Irvine. I'm a PhD candidate planning to do my defense later this year. Today I'm going to present my dissertation work on evaluating broadcast reliability in vehicular ad hoc networks. So just to quickly overview the motivation, and I think a lot of us are familiar with this, is the cost of transportation mobility in terms of the statistics for safety and congestions. We see millions of accidents per year, around 40,000 casualties in the US here. And in the congestions, we're losing billions of hours and fuel gallons wasted. And I believe that this vision of vehicular ad hoc networks serves as a vehicular grid network and has some real potential applications. Probably I can just really skim through this one. I'm sure people in the audience know this. But there's a variety of applications here going from traffic safety, commercial infotainment, and so forth. So the vehicular ad hoc network area, the system requirements here, I'm going to be focusing more on broadcast communications. And the reason I focus on broadcast communication is because of the kind of focus on safety critical applications, where what you want is to disseminate your data information to your neighboring vehicles. And some other requirements is that you need to have high reliability, and it can also be very sensitive to delay. And when I mean sensitive to delay, it means the time that it takes to propagate the message in the network. Certainly, if you propagate an important safety message over a few seconds, that message might already be old and it might not be relevant at all. The traditional problem that we have here with this broadcast communication is you have this concept of broadcast storm problem, and also this concept of network disconnection problem, especially for a vehicular network environment. And some of the unique characteristics here, certainly we can see the mobility model of vehicles, the network topology, which is very specific for VANet because it's governed by the rule that's being formulated, whether it's in arterial world or whether it's in the highway world. And it's also in a very dynamic changing network. And the figure here on the right, I just kind of briefly demonstrate the difference between a MANET and a VANet, where in a VANET you might have a random walk scheme or mobility movement But in VNet, it's really governed by the way your road is laid out, and it's also governed by the safety distance between the vehicles in front and also the traffic control systems. So our approach here in my work has been a focus on how you can actually, looking at from the perspective of a network designer, how you can actually improve your network design, network systems. And the way I look at that is by incorporating traffic flow models, particularly information on whether the condition of the traffic, whether you are in a dense, a moderate, or whether you're in a sparse traffic. And I also look at characteristics in terms of the vehicle mobility movement, whether you are in a shockwave position or whether you are in a stop-and-go traffic. And these are kind of two common scenarios that can occur, especially in highways, and certainly here in Southern California, where you can have different traffic streams on the highway, and if they meet, you're going to have a shockwave point. And also, if they're very congested, the vehicles are going to behave in a stop-and-go manner. And so this information feedback can be come from the infrastructure or come from your neighboring vehicles, give you information about their velocity, about which direction they're moving, and also their vehicle positions. And so what I do is I take this information from the traffic flow models, and then you fine-tune your network design. Particularly, I'm looking at fine-tuning the network design at two endpoints. One is from the client, and one is from the media. So I'm looking at from the application level, and also from in 802.11p, this will be in the MAC layer level. So basically, the idea is to take information that you know about your traffic flow characteristics and then incorporate this into your network design. So what is the information that you're taking from the traffic flow characteristics? I kind of group that into two manners. One is on the macroscopic level, which is looking at your fundamental traffic flow diagram and the relationship of your vehicle speed in relation to density, and deriving, under what conditions, when it's congested, what speed the vehicle need to operate in. Certainly, the speed of vehicles need to operate based on the safety distance between the car in front of them. And so you can, if it's a bigger network, then you can use this fundamental diagram to estimate what velocity the vehicles are traveling. And in a sense, you kind of have a matter of how the network is moving. And if you look at it from a microscopic point of view, you can use certainly many car-fine model. And here I just use Novell de Genzel's car-fine model, as it's a very fundamental way and also a very calibrated model to look at the distance between vehicles from a vehicle-to-vehicle manner. If you just have the time and also the the reaction time, you can actually derive the vehicle in front of you. So some of the ongoing work here is to evaluating this network performance using NS2 simulators, and I've been using this with the incorporation of 802.11p settings as well to make it more realistic. Certainly, NS2 has the capabilities to model the network, but 802.11p does have some specific parameters that's incorporated into the system. And then from NS2, then I generate some of these vehicle trajectories. Particularly, I've generated the shockwave traffic and also the stop-and-go traffic trajectories. And then what I do is in my communication system, I started fine-tuning my system to make it more optimal. I look at ways to dynamically adjust your contention window size. Typically, this goes through a binary exponential backoff when you hit collision. But instead of relying on collision, you're kind of relying on how dense the traffic is, and then you dynamically adjust your contention window as a way to increase your reliability. Now, there is a trade-off for that. I mean, certainly, higher contention window gives you better reliability, but at the expense of time. And as long as you can meet within, let's say, the 100 millisecond time frame from one vehicle to the next, then you can still satisfy your constraint. The other one I've looked at was the dynamic transmission range, which is the fine-tuning your power both the vehicles that you're communicating with. And again, that's been using, you can fine-tune that parameters by using the characteristics of your traffic. These are the two papers that will be published in IEEE VCS, and one that I presented actually earlier this morning. And, but I won't have time to go over the details of all the simulation results. So I guess kind of the expected contribution is that what I believe is that VNet entails a specific characteristic within mobile ad hoc network, and it can improve communication if we have a better understanding of the underlying network. And so this work is about providing reliable and efficient broadcasting in VNet and addressing particularly the broadcast storm problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a store and forward model here, and but you don't have anything at the network layer for knowing how far your information broadcasts out. How do you make sure that as you broadcast information, that you're not broadcasting stale information? And how do you know how far away your information is reaching, or from how far away you're getting information?
You saying, so when you broadcast, you're fine-tuning your transmission power, so you can know whether you're going 50 meters, 100 meters.
But if you're not getting any feedback from the other vehicles, you're just broadcasting, how do you know what your power level should be for the distance?
Right. So the assumption, maybe I wasn't clear. The assumption is that you first have so there's two ways. One is you either get beacons back from them, so you know where they're located. The other way is if you assume that the network, you first kind of assume that the infrastructure feeds back this whole kind of aggregate traffic characteristic to you, saying this you're now in a network with 30 vehicles per kilometer, or you're in a network with 60 vehicles per kilometer, or you're in the vehicle that's 90 vehicles per kilometer. And then you're also looking at your speed versus if you receive, let's say, a braking message, that you know there's something going on in front of you. So there's kind of the feedback of the beacons and also from the infrastructure.
But how do you know what's in front of you and what's behind you, or what's in the other lane next to you?
How do you know?
What's ahead of you, what's behind you, and what's next to you? If you're broadcasting, it broadcasts in all directions.
The information that you broadcast, there's also the GPS coordinate, so you would know if it's going to be forward and back. Now, certainly if it's on the left or right hand, because GPS only gets around 10 meters accuracy, that's going to be hard. But from forward and backwards, you can derive it from the GPS coordinates. Because one vehicle is about 6.6 meters. So a vehicle that's in front of you has to be, if they're in the safety distance, they have to be at least 6 or 7 meters ahead of you.
Thank you.
I have experience in many areas of intelligent vehicles except communication. Can you please tell me what is VANet and MANet? What is it?
Vehicular ad hoc networks. And then MANet is mobile ad hoc networks. So yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop us here just so we can move on. Thank you very much. Thanks. We're going to move on now to Ali Tawfiq from Virginia Tech.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Ali Tawfiq. I'm a PhD candidate in Virginia Tech. My expected graduation date is next year. Hopefully that will become true. My faculty advisor is Dr. Hisham Raka, and he's sitting back there. So the title of my dissertation work is Route Choice, a Behavior Analysis and Modeling Approach. So route choice, this is Brandon. This is not my updated presentation.
Sorry. Excuse me 1 second. We're going to jump real quick out of here. Sorry about that. Is there
The one after the next.
this one? Okay, we'll try that again.
All right, thank you.
Reboot.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so route choice is is the model of when a driver is faced with various options of traveling from a point of origin to a point of destination. How does the driver pick his or her travel route? Now, route choice has lots and lots of applications in transportation engineering. These are just a few. So in transportation planning and traffic management models or evaluations, which are typically applied through simulation models, route choice models are used there. In advanced area-wide signal control systems, route choice is used there. In cost-to-benefit analysis of advanced travel and information systems, especially dynamic electronic route guidance systems, route choice is heavily involved in the benefit-to-cost analysis and information compliance models. Now, the objective of my dissertation is to explore the behavioral cognition factors of drivers that are typically assumed in route choice models. These assumptions include driver knowledge, perceptions of traffic conditions, and specifically travel time on the different travel routes. Route choice, the significance of travel time. All route choice models assume that travel time is the most significant factor in route choices of drivers. Driver learning, how by repetition, like if we're commuting from home to work every day, do we become more knowledgeable and do we learn from our daily choices and do we become better in making choices in the future? This constitutes the core of route choice models, because if drivers know the traffic conditions on all alternative routes, and if drivers learn by experience, then there is no point in providing them with information about travel times because they already know this. So on the other hand, if they don't know this, then dynamic electronic route guidance systems are extremely important for drivers. They can save us time, they can save us energy, they can reduce our carbon print, and so forth. Other factors are there differences between drivers groups with respect to route choice, age, young drivers, old drivers, mid-aged drivers, gender, education, and so forth. And are there any difference in learning cognition of drivers, or do we all learn in the same manner? So the initial experiment which we designed, we used the StySim driving simulator, and that's the picture of it. We designed this network with a point of origin and a point of destination, two alternative routes, and we asked our drivers to drive from origin to destination for 20 consecutive times. And we recorded their travel times experienced on each one of their choices, and as well as their choices. We picked a sample of different drivers with respect to age, gender, ethnicity, education, driving years, and annual driven miles. We asked them, so the procedure of the experiment, we asked them to drive this simulator for some practice runs, as well for the experiment runs, and we had a pre-test questionnaire asking them about their demographic information, and a post-test questionnaire asking them which route did they pick, which route do they think was better with respect to travel time, travel speed, and traffic congestion. So these are the experiences and the perceptions of our drivers. With respect to traffic, we had three different factors. We thought that drivers might perceive a route to be more or less congested based on three different factors. The average number of vehicles they encountered, so how many vehicles they saw when they picked one of the two routes. What is the minimum car following distance, so whether it's a vehicle they followed or a vehicle that was following them. What is the minimum distance, car following distance, that they experienced when they picked the route, and what was the average car following distance throughout their whole journey. We also recorded their travel times, and according to this, the right route was 5% faster than the left route. And then we asked them for their perception. Now we asked them for their perceptions with respect to travel time, travel speed, and traffic. Now I'm not presenting everything, but on this slide I'm making particular focus on the difference with respect to travel speed perceptions and travel times perceptions. Because according to our design, the distance was constant. There was no difference in distance between the right and the left route. So their perceptions, drivers' perceptions with respect to travel time and traffic speed should have been identical because because time equals distance over speed. And since distance is constant, so time and speed, they represent the same thing. So, however, according to this, we can see that there were differences. Drivers did not perceive that travel time is the travel speed. Now, this will have a significance in the findings which are coming in a few slides. Now, when we cross-examine drivers' experiences to their perceptions to find, okay, did drivers perceive what they actually experienced? Now, the funny thing is only 12% actually perceived what they experienced, and that's whether they chose the left route, and according to their choices, the left route was faster, and they perceived the left faster. So that 0%. None of the drivers picked the left route while experiencing the left route being faster. 12% of the drivers picked the right route, and it was what experienced the right route faster, and that was their perception. 12% of the drivers perceived the opposite. So although they experienced the right route faster, they thought that the left was faster, and the vice versa. And about 76% of the drivers did not perceive a difference, although there was a difference, with an average of that is ranging between 4 to 8% of the travel time. Now, comparing drivers' choices to their experiences and perceptions, we'll find that comparing the experience to the choice, we'll find that approximately 50% of the drivers chose the route which was not the faster one. Now, and this ranges over the whole 20 trials so we asked them to choose a route to travel on from origin to destination for 20 consecutive times. And over all these 20 times, which incorporated a lot of learning, supposedly, 50% of the drivers made the wrong choice. Now, this 50% is very interesting because this means that drivers had no idea what they were choosing. Because if they flipped a coin, then they had a 50% chance of choosing the route which is actually faster. So what this says, it says drivers did not learn a thing from their choices. Now, comparing perception, now this is primarily attributable to the differences between experiences and perceptions. So when we compared drivers' perceptions to their choices, so did they actually 0? Okay. So we identified 3 types of behavior: illogical behavior, drivers choosing what they perceived as the better route; cognitive behavior, drivers choosing a route while perceiving no difference; and illogical behavior, which is drivers choosing a route which they perceived was the worst. And according to travel speed, now this is comparing choices to travel time perceptions and choices to travel speed perceptions. According to travel speed perceptions, drivers were more rational. And what this implies, it implies that drivers make their choices based on travel speed more than travel time perceptions. And we can observe this in our behavior because we might pick the traveling on the interstate, although it's a few seconds longer in travel time than downtown because we do not want to stop at traffic lights, for example. So I will wrap this last thing I'll mention because I think that's the most important finding. We identified 4 types of behaviors, of cognition learning trends. 14% of the drivers chose one route. They were happy with their choice. They never even tried the other route. They had no idea whether the other route was better or worse. They just kept repeating their choice for all 20 trials. 16% tried each route only once, made a choice, never thought about revisiting their choice. 38% of the drivers kept switching but had an obvious preference for one of the routes. And 32% of the drivers never made a choice. And when we asked them why is this, the reasons ranged from because we do not like to keep patterns because that's what they taught us in the Navy, to because I always keep switching because I know I always wish to know what's happening in the town. And that's the way I find out what's happening in my town. Now, this can be particularly interesting and useful in marketing travel and information systems, because we do not think that this driver who does not wish to keep trends is going to be interested in buying travel information system, because this person does not care which route is the better. Anyhow, and that's the next step of our research. So I will stop here.
Yeah, one question I have, how do you guarantee the statistical relevance of this data? Did you have any experts by designing your experiments, or who did that? You showed us a lot of numbers, and you made some results from that, and are they relevant statistically or not? That's my question. And
well, that's obviously a very important thing that I should have mentioned. So my dissertation is analysis and modeling. That was the analysis part. Right now I'm working on the modeling. Several factors have shown to be significant. However, in another study that was done 2 years ago and published, it was done in Delft University, the past student, current doctor, his name is Boujin, his conclusion was he did an almost similar experiment, and in route choice, he incorporated a personal attribute factors. One of the covariate was a person-specific covariate. And according to his finding, the person-specific factor was extremely important in modeling route choice. And according to this, I think that I hope that I haven't done the modeling yet. That's what I'm doing right now. And I'm using a decision field theory in a hierarchical model. And I think that modeling route choice according to these 4 hierarchies, the 4 identified driver groups, I think this can hopefully will produce better results.
Thank you. I think we'll have to stop there. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on now to the next one. It's going to be Kong Tran from UCSD.
Hi, my name is Kong Tran. I'm from CVR lab at UCSD, working with Professor Mohan Trivedi. And this brief presentation is about my thesis proposal in investigating posture analysis at multiple levels of detail for active safety. And so my general objective is to build a vision-based system that looking at driver to learn, to understand, and to help driver. And how can I? So this is an example of a system that looking at driver, and we may see that when there's some critical situation like driver doesn't follow the tip for safe driving, like keeping hand on the wheel and eyes on the road, then the system can understand that and try to alert the driver. And so having such a system can help to improve the performance of driver assistance system to save lives, to improve safety, and as well as improve the driving experience. However, this is also a challenging problem because for application like active safety, where the real-time and robustness requirements are critical. And in the driving situation, we also have the difficulty of the changing background, changing lighting condition that we need to deal with. For the approach, we see that related study in the vision-based system looking at driver for active safety currently focus more on the face-related feature like the head pose and eye gaze, and facial feature for detecting like lane change intent, detecting fatigue state, detecting the mental state. And there are also some study using the hand movement, like to try to detecting the turn intent or so. But we see that beside that face-related feature and hand movement, the whole driver posture also contain important information for active safety. Like we can see that the sitting posture of the driver can indicate that the driver is in a relaxed or in a concentrated state. And we can see that in some maneuver, there's also some posture change in preparation, like in highway driving before a lane change and before the driver do the head turn. Maybe from our real-world driving data, we see that driver also have that kind of moving forward a little bit to have a better visual check. So we see that by incorporating the driver posture and incorporating the driver posture at a different level of detail, including head pose, hand movement, and the whole upper body posture can help to improve the performance of the system. And so this the general step that I intend to follow. And the two things that first I want to use the pose tracking output for driver activity analysis, because the tracking output is a clear and intuitive way to incorporate the underlying the knowledge of the underlying body model into the driver activity analysis. And then the second is that I try to do the driver posture analysis at multiple levels of detail to improve the performance of the system. And after understand the driver activity, we need to interact with the driver when needed. And we see that the interaction with the driver is not just the final state, but it can also go back to help to improve the performance of the previous step, like in the pose tracking or in the activity analysis step. And follow this approach, we have several related research issues that we need to deal with. So first, how we can track the driver posture at multiple levels of detail. And because for the active safety application, we need the system to be real-time, robust, and fully automated. And for different level, we might need to have different setup for each level, like the whole upper body pose, we need different camera system. And for a final level of the facial feature or the hand gesture, we may need different camera system. And to achieve the goal of real-time, robust, and robustness, we may need to develop the system specific for each level to have the efficiency instead of develop kind of general approach for all level. And to illustrate this kind of discussion, I will talk about a system that we have developed for upper body pose tracking by using only the extremity movement. So we see that in the driving situation, we have some difficulty, like the changing background and changing lighting condition. But we also have some kind of advantage, like we see that the movement of the driver is not totally free, like driver typically sitting a fixed position and doing the hand gesture. So we try to exploit that fact to improve the efficiency of the system. And in this one, this work is motivated from human ability, that human can only look at the movement of some important part, like the extremity in this case. And we see that this is the movement of the three blob, but if we tell the observer that this is the hand and head blob of a human in a meeting situation, then the observer may tell that what the subject is doing, like you can see he clapping and do some gesture. So in this work, we try to develop a computational framework that the machine can do the same thing by looking at the extremity movement and try to predict the whole upper body pose as an inverse kinematic problem. And the underlying idea is that the extremity is the part that we can track more reliable with less occlusion, and the extremity, including head and hand, are typically more well-defined with the skin color and with the specific shape of the head. So we can want to use that part that we can track more reliable to have the other part that harder to track. And second, by breaking into two steps, first we track the extremity and then do the inverse kinematic prediction. We can reduce the complexity to achieve the real-time performance. And next, we need to have a framework to systematically investigate the role of multi-level driver posture for activity analysis. And there's two things that I want to mention. That first, we need to have the coordination between the real-world testbed and the simulation testbeds, because the real world is the final goal that we want to work with. But the simulation also has the advantage that we can have more flexibility in designing the setup and designing the analysis. So we have developed both the real-world testbeds that we have seen in previous slides and the simulation testbeds. And this is an example of the testbed that we have. We have the simulation driving software, and we have cameras looking at the upper body pose, looking at the face, and looking at the foot. And even in my work, I only focus on the vision input, but in this setup, we also have captured the audio input and the EEG data, so we can have multimodal analysis and can have a holistic approach for driver activity analysis. And we see that too, we will need to determine how we can combine different cues from pose tracking at different level, and we can have the rule-based approach or the statistical approach. And after understanding the driver activity, we will need to figure out a way to give feedback to the driver. And this is important because if we don't have an appropriate feedback, then the user will disregard the system, and that's it's not good. And we also need to evaluate the system as a whole. So the expected contribution is that I will develop the techniques for robust and real-time tracking of driver posture at different levels of detail, and try to build and evaluate the interactive system for driver activity analysis to have better driver assistance system compared to the current technique that they only use the head pose or the facial feature. And to achieve this goal, I would really appreciate your comments and input. Thank you.
Okay, so for the matter of time, we're going to just be one question if there's any questions from our group here. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so yeah, just as another note, we're going to try to make sure you look at me because we're going to go way over if we don't do this. So next up is Ashish Tiwari from University of California, San Diego.
Is it in the same folder?
Yeah, you should play.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ashish Tiwari. I'm working at the LISA Laboratory with Professor Mohan Trivedi. This is my second year in my PhD program. I will talk about robust driver emotion analysis in human-centric intelligent vehicle. The larger objective of my research is to build and develop an audiovisual system which can recognize human emotion in real-world environment. I'll show you an example of environment which I am talking about. Do you have audio here? I need that.
This is very good, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was the... So, okay, let me move on. The objective of this, so motivation for my studies, we know that phenomena like road rage, where driver emotion impacts the safety of driving tasks. Research also suggests that matching in-car voice to the emotion of driver improves driving performance. We are all also aware that today's cars are fitted with complex interactive system, which potentially increases the risk of distraction. Research suggests that speech-based systems are less distracting. So to improve this speech-based system, integrating the effective cues can improve this speech-based systems. And in this brief talk, I will focus on investigating the impact of acoustic conditions on the recognition of emotions. So this is a basic framework, and the idea is that the input to this system is a
wow, the sunset is so beautiful,
and the output is recognized emotion. This framework has two major components. One is speech processing part, and another one is machine learning aspect. These two components can also be improved with contextual information. But what is unique to my study is here, I want to evaluate this system in noisy conditions, especially in driving tasks. When we are driving, while driving, the noise characteristics changes continuously. So to build this system which can work in real-world environment, we need to study real-world adequately. For this, we collect noise samples while driving different places like freeways, parking lot, city street. I'll show you an example of.
Wow, it is a great day. Wow, it is a great day.
So we see that different places have different types of noise. We also considered different SNR level. This is based on the field study which we did. And then we use an adaptive noise cancellation technique to enhance the speech. So
oh my, the sunset is so beautiful. Oh my, the sunset is so beautiful.
Noisy speech.
Oh my, the sunset is so beautiful.
Notice that there are some artifacts. The reason is that our adaptive noise cancellation technique, the objective criteria is to improve the emotion classification by machine rather than improving the audio perceptual quality of audio by human. So given this speech signal, we extract acoustic features like pitch of the in the utterance, pitch contour, energy contour, MFCCs, and speaking rate. In the right side, you see an example of pitch and energy contour. Given this time series over the utterance, we extract global statistics to form a feature vector. Over 1,000, which goes through a feature selection process and retains the useful information, useful features, which can get inside the classifier. In our case, we use support vector machines for emotion classification. We do this for both noisy speech and enhanced speech and see what is the performance. This is a bit busy slide. Let me. There are two databases which we use to evaluate. There is a Berlin database which is available publicly, and the database which we are collecting in the driving scenario. As we see that the basic framework for clean speech performs very well. We have, for 7 class, we have 84% accuracy, overall accuracy. For 3 class, over 87% accuracy. As we expect, noise degrades performance. What I would like to draw your attention is that a couple of points is the noise performance largely, the system performance largely depends upon the signal to noise ratio as opposed to the type of noise we are talking about. And the second point is for audio-visual, LISA database, we see that even for noisy speech at high SNR, we have pretty good recognition accuracy. Now, this can be attributed to the matched testing and training environment because this database was collected while driving. So, to conclude, we know that we have a high recognition accuracy when the speech is clean, but noise surely degrades the performance. We see that speech enhancement improves the performance, but there are more rooms, I believe, to which we can work on. And we believe that when we add visual modality and do audio-visual analysis, we will have a much better improvement. We would also like to go for improved speech acquisition by using microphone array and other array technology. And last but not the least, that We want to collect real world, we are collecting, and we want to collect more real world data so that we can evaluate and design a better system. Thank you.
Questions?
How this information is exploited in a driving assistance system?
It's a very good question, and
Can you repeat the question?
so the question is that what happens if you recognize emotion? What you want to do, right? It's a very important question, and when human is in the center, it is really critical to use this information effectively. What I would like to say is that currently in the speech interactive system, we know that sometimes when we work on like calling to credit card, phone, and giving our numbers, sometimes we have a problem communicating, and it gives frustration. And today's system have no idea how to understand those frustrations. So hope is that if we have, the first step is that we want to integrate, we want to take those information, which we want to make a system which first can detect those information and maybe adaptively route to some different route to improve user experience.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on now, and Kaisuke Doman from Nagoya University.
This is my latest version. My latest version. Good afternoon. I'm Keisuke Doma from Nagoya University in Japan. I became a doctoral second year student this April. My advisor is Professor Hiroshi Murase. My dissertation is about traffic sign detection and recognition towards smart driver assistance. In recent years, the number of driving safety support systems is increasing. However, conventional driving safety support systems may cause driver distractions with too much information. As shown in this figure, when a lot of information is provided to the driver, it may be an overload to the driver. So the problem to be solved is how to prevent driver distractions. As an approach to prevent driver distractions, I focus on a visibility-based approach. That is, I focus on controlling the amount of information provided from driving safety support systems based on the target visibility. The targets of this research are traffic signs that are important for traffic safety. These figures show an anticipated application. If traffic signs are in good visibility, the system will not alert the driver. But if traffic signs are in poor visibility, the system will alert the driver. So by this way, the system can control the amount of information provided to the driver and prevent driver distractions. This is the process flow of the proposed system. Firstly, an in-vehicle camera image is input to the system. Secondly, the system detects and recognizes traffic signs. Although I spare the details in this presentation, I have proposed this technique in the international conference ICIC, International Conference on Innovative Computing, Information and Control. Next, the system estimates traffic sign visibility. I'm currently focusing on this technique, and I will present my work in tomorrow's poster session. Finally, the system notifies the information of the traffic signs to the driver, only if the traffic signs are in poor visibility. To estimate the visibility of traffic signs, I focus on evaluating multiple image features based on the contrast of color, edge, and texture. These figures show the relations, the image features, and the visibility. So, in each image, the circular region is in high visibility because of the high contrast between foreground and background. However, as each contrast becomes lower, like this, and like this, and like this. So as each contrast becomes lower, the target visibility also becomes lower. So in view of this fact, I'm thinking of regarding higher contrast as higher visibility. For more details, please come and discuss with me in tomorrow's poster session. As research contributions, I expect to realize nuisance-free driving safety support systems that provide only important and needed information, and consequently provide safe and comfortable driving. And ultimately, I expect to form the technical basis of advanced driving safety support systems. Thank you for your kind attention.
So we probably have time for a couple questions if there's any questions.
This is on, now it's on, okay. Have you performed any investigation, or will you perform any investigations on the conditions when drivers overlook the traffic sign? So how much contrast they accept or they need, how much texture behind the traffic sign they can accept? Have you any hints for that? So, in order to calibrate your system?
Sorry, please speak more slowly.
Sorry. Will you perform investigations using human drivers to get some feeling what contrast they need in order to see the traffic sign? Because you want to realize a system that only displays the information if you think that the driver has overlooked it. So that seems to be very tricky.
Sorry, I can't understand your question.
Okay.
Short question, please.
I have a short question. Did you evaluate the visibility distance for the traffic signs?
How to estimate?
So this is a question. There are theories which allowed to evaluate the visibility distance.
Your question is about how to estimate the visibility of traffic signs? No?
The distance for which the traffic sign is still visible.
The distance?
Yes.
Yes.
For which the traffic sign is still visible for the human driver, for a human being, for the driver.
The distance affects the visibility of traffic signs. You know?
This visibility is conditioned by lighting, by
Yes.
In the night, by fog, by sunny conditions, so this visibility distance is different.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think we can take this on offline, and perhaps in the poster session tomorrow we can talk about it. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Okay, so next we'll have Sinan Sivaraman from University of California, San Diego.
Hello, I'm Sinan Sivaraman. I'm a third-year PhD student at University of California at San Diego, so I expect to graduate in 2012, maybe 2013. I'm in the Laboratory for Intelligent and Safe Automobiles. My dissertation advisor is Mohan Trivedi. So the title of my talk today is Integrating Vision Systems for Driver Assistance. So I'll briefly motivate this with, I think I lost my citation here. These are World Health Organization statistics on the impact that automobile accidents have annually. And as we know in this room, that's quite severe. In addition, the driver experience is becoming more and more distracting with all sorts of infotainment, navigation systems, DVDs, and so forth. Vision systems provide a nice modality for assisting the driver. Insofar as it is intuitive for the driver to understand what a vision system is feeding back. And in addition, the driver can do some sort of validation on the false alarms that a vision system gives, as opposed to, say, a radar system. An example I'll give you is some commercial vehicles now have radars on the back, so when you back up, it'll beep if there might be an obstacle or a pedestrian or what have you. If the radar gives you an incorrect, a false alarm, and you hear a ding, that's more distracting than anything else, and you have no way to validate what the radar is seeing. If you have a vision system that feeds back that it sees a pedestrian, but really it saw, say, a tree trunk or a street lamp, something that looks like a pedestrian, at least the driver can validate and decide for himself in a little bit more of an intuitive, integrated way. So vision systems for driver assistance have been an active area of research for the past couple of decades, really. And a lot of prior research has focused on lane detection, vehicle detection, pedestrian detection, etc. What I'm proposing is that, if we have all these different systems, is there a way that we can integrate them together and achieve a synergistic effect from them? So I'll motivate this with sort of like a teaser that we could potentially improve the reliability and performance of vision systems for driver assistance by combining more than one module. So this, on the top left, if you'll focus there, these blue dots are the outputs of a lane marking detector. And what you'll notice is that because we're following the vehicle in front of us pretty closely, the vehicle in front of us, firstly, occludes some of the lane markings. And secondly, the highlights on the vehicle will actually present us with some erroneous lane markings. So actually, our lane estimation is pretty poor in this scenario. If we integrate knowledge of the vehicle, so vehicle localization, we can actually eliminate these erroneous lane markings, which I've shown red, and our lane localization is much improved. And this isn't a contrived example. This is actually from a study we did that at least with the lane tracking systems that we've been working with, we find that in dense traffic, these systems may suffer from poor localization. So I'll go into sort of my research goal summed up in like a sentence or so. For driver assistance, we would like to integrate multiple vision systems to identify critical objects and situations in a real-time, robust manner. So critical objects may be vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, and also infrastructure, crosswalks, traffic signals, and the like. And critical situations would be sort of what information can you take from these and identify as potentially a dangerous situation, I'd say. So erratic driving, ego vehicle or other vehicles, lane departures, potential collisions, etc. And we have sort of a catalog of what has been done in the field, and of course these areas do continue to be active areas of research, but lane tracking, pedestrian, vehicle detection, etc. So this is sort of what I propose and what I would expect to achieve from integrating multiple vision systems. So firstly and most basically, we may be able to improve the performance of each respective system, kind of like I teased at earlier with the combining the lane and the vehicle. So that might result in better recall precision or localization error. But in addition, we might also be able to get squeeze some computational achievement out of that, perhaps by eliminating a certain search area because we know something else is already there. But at a higher level, what we really want to do is understand criticality. And so I'll give the example of pedestrians. There are groups that have very robust pedestrian detection out there, but pedestrians behave very much differently at a crosswalk or an intersection than they do when they're on the sidewalk. So having some prior knowledge of where are we and what is the traffic context in which we detect a pedestrian can potentially help us to identify what the critical situations are. So really at a higher level, we're talking about understanding the context and the interactions between the different players in the traffic scenario, the ego vehicle, the other vehicles, the pedestrians, and the infrastructure. So, of course, there are various research challenges that come along with such an approach. Of course, for driver assistance, we want robust performance in a variety of lighting and weather conditions and road conditions, urban and highway. We also want the system to be to perform in a time-critical manner for potentially avoiding accidents. But these, in many ways, are concerns that are common to a lot of vision systems and a lot of driver assistance systems in general. But sort of, I guess here is maybe some of the meat. So first of all, how do we develop robust vision-based localization and tracking systems? And of course, this has been a very active area in the field and will continue to be. So the first question beyond that is, how can multiple systems reinforce each other? And this is the improved localization, potentially recall precision. The second, what information can be inferred by combining multiple modules that is otherwise unavailable? So how can we get a synergistic effect out of these? And I've sort of hinted at that. And the third question is, how do we effectively combine the information from these multiple systems? So this is some prior work we did with vehicle localization and tracking, and I'm running low on time, so I won't bore you with the details, but there are learning frameworks that do come out of this if you want to improve just the localization and tracking. But sort of beyond this, this is sort of like a general outline. So I mean, we have multiple systems that may consist of signal image processing, machine learning, tracking, localization, what have you. And again, how do we combine these? So I mean, we have some options. There may be 3D or 2D geometric constraints. There may be some sort of integrated tracking and prediction. Beyond that, there may be object interaction models that we can learn. So again, I'll summarize the expected contributions. Improve system performance in terms of computation and correctness, so to speak, but also the higher semantic level of understanding of context and learning the interactions between on-road objects. And of course, we would like these systems to operate robustly and in real time.
So we have time for a few questions.
Well, you very clearly stated the problems, the challenges of this conference in total. I wonder which methodology you are going to use to solve all these problems in a generic framework.
That's a very good question. I think I'm sort of going to work from the ground up in the sense that, currently in our group we do have some modules that do vehicle detection, that do lane detection, and of course in the literature there is work out there on pedestrian detection, and I think in some sense, the order in which I presented these would be the order that I work through it. So first of all, I would see, is there a way to improve pedestrian detection given vehicle detection or vice versa? Because if you detect an overlap, for example, of pedestrians and vehicles in 3D space, either the vehicle has hit the pedestrian already or, you might have a false alarm. So that's sort of the first step. These ones, they sort of go a little further, so there might be more interesting models or learning techniques we could explore. A new school of thought in some of the machine learning communities is, structured output learning. So how can you take these almost disparate features that do present some sort of structure, and the structure in this sense would be traffic interactions, and how can you learn a very robust regression from, low criticality to high criticality? So.
Thank you. I think that's all the time we have for. Thank you. Again. And so we'll move on to Philip Lenz from KIT.
Thank you, Brandon. Hello, everybody. My name is Philip Lenz. I'm a PhD student at the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, Institute of Measurement and Control Systems of Professor Stiller. My PhD topic investigates on a combined approach for scene segmentation and object detection for inner city traffic scenarios using color information and stereo information. The motivation for this project is that modern driver assistance systems need reliable information on the current environment. For different road scenes, it's a different complexity, and especially for highways, we have a well-defined environment, lane markings, provide sufficient information on the current road layout, and we have similar object views and only few types of objects, cars and trucks that we always see from the back. All objects move in the same direction. It's a similar object movement. And for suburban scenarios, the task is a bit more complex, a bit more challenging. We usually have a consistent road geometry, but sufficient features such as lane markings in this image might be missing. We have different types of traffic participants, such as cars, pedestrians, or cyclists. And the traffic participants might move in different directions, and we have a multitude of views of the objects. For inner city scenarios, the task is even more challenging since we have arbitrary road geometry, and due to that, a multitude of object views and moving directions. As you can see in this picture, additionally, different objects may occlude each other in a multitude of ways. So the approach for my project is to extract static and dynamic features to provide sufficient information for road geometry estimation, especially for intersections. Therefore, in the first step, the static features are extracted. Ground plane information from a disparity image is used to extract curbstones for the close-up range up to something like 20 meters that provide information, precise information about the road layout, even in the absence of lane markings. And additionally, house fronts are extracted from the disparity image that provide a rough information about the road layout, even for a range up to 70 or 80 meters. In the second step, dynamic features are extracted from the image. Therefore, in the first step, object position, possible object position, and object sizes are used to create a region of interest in a 3D world coordinate system. For this region of interest, interest points are detected, and characteristic object parts, like a tire for a car, are matched to the interest points. For only relevant parts according to the position of the interest points in the 3D world coordinate system are used. This top-down segmentation allows for a combined and probabilistic object detection and scene segmentation for different types of objects, especially for cars. In an additional step, the car boundaries are refined using color information. And the position of the car boundaries in the 3D world coordinate system is used to estimate the principal axis of the car as an additional feature to estimate the road layout. A detected object is tracked within the scene, and the motion of the object is used to verify the object hypothesis. Possible applications for this approach are current and future driver assistance systems that may benefit from these features, for example, inner city intersection assistance or collision avoidance. Autonomous driving may also benefit from this approach, since path planning can be improved with a better road geometry estimation as well. The expected contribution of this work is a combined scene segmentation and object detection. Static and dynamic features are extracted from a video sequence using color and stereo information, and provide sufficient information for road geometry estimation for inner city scenarios such as intersection. I thank you for your attention, and I'm excited about your questions and your feedback.
So we have plenty of time, I think, on this one for questions.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. You mentioned color. Your images are black and white. Can you say some words on that?
Yes. The images are right now black and white because the stereo platform only has 2 grayscale cameras. Right now, the color camera is will be part of the vehicle. And we want to create a database that contains ground truths for the stereo and the additional color images. So this will start within July.
Do you expect much information from color in traffic scenes?
Yes, especially for house fronts and some types of cars, because house fronts usually have large, similar colored areas, and also cars have usually one significant color. So I think this will be a distinctive feature.
Last question: the truck or the van you showed, the segmentation results. They were very good.
This is just an example. Yeah, it's hand labeled because I just started a few months ago.
I understand that. Thank you very much.
I have a question. So usually the urban environment is very crowded. Yes. A distinction between static and dynamic parts is difficult to be done, or better is difficult to identify the static part because they are covered by vehicles and pedestrians and other participants. Do you have a solution for such complex environment?
Yeah, that's the problem. Even at this intersection, I don't have any of the static features except some house fronts for, I don't know, 80 meters or something like that. So the features I want to extract, only all features together are sufficient to provide, to estimate the road geometry. So if there are no curbstones or all curbstones and lane markings are occluded, the flow of pedestrians and cars is used as a feature to estimate different road lanes and, the different directions of the lanes and the intersection geometry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, did you? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on. Also from KIT is Andreas Geiger. So welcome everybody. My name is Andreas Geiger and I'm excited to be here and to talk about my topic, which is hybrid models for vision-based intersection understanding. I'm also from Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, and I want to first acknowledge my advisors, which are Professor Stiller and Martin Lauer from KIT, and Professor Rakel Urtasun from Toyota Technology Institute in Chicago, where I'm currently visiting intern. So the problem I'm interested in is if you're given a stereo input sequence like as you can see from the figure on top here, you want to estimate a coarse road geometry which you're expecting in the near future. And the interesting thing about that is what features can you use, and what inference algorithms and what model can there be employed. And if you look very closely to this figure, even for a human, it's very hard to see the intersection here because there are a lot of occlusions, etc. So there are quite some applications for such a system. First of all, you have a driver assistance system where you could benefit from that by projecting the information into the head-up display of a driver such that the driver can see what it's going to expect. And also mobile navigation systems, since they often suffer from imprecise signal, especially in tunnels or urban areas where the signal is very weak, so you can enhance the GPS information for the driver. Also, of course, autonomous driving is an application. For example, one yet unsolved problem in autonomous driving is traversing a real-world intersection scenario with a lot of traffic and pedestrians. And this is really complicated and hard, so this would be an example. And also stereo reconstruction can benefit from that, since, for example, in distant regions you have usually a very large stereo error which scales quadratically with distance. So if you know something about your scene, like facades, trees, road, you can improve the stereo or the 3D reconstruction from that too. So the problem is hard due to several reasons. First of all, you have a huge variety of different road geometries. So this might be not as much a problem here in the US, but in Europe especially, you have a lot of different geometries, so that's really hard. And you also have a varying number of parameters in your model, meaning that, for example, you have different number of streets and lanes where you have to do some model selection. And you also have the problem with bad or even missing lane markings, which you cannot see. Also, occlusions, as you've already seen, are a huge problem in highly trafficked scene. And also structure shadows, for example, since structure shadows produce markings which are very close to actually lane markings, and you have to do a robust estimate on that and filter out outliers. Sensor saturation is also a big problem. In our sequences, typically you have saturation in the dark as well as in the bright, and you have to take this into consideration. And pedestrians, of course, are also an interesting feature, but they can occur pretty randomly, but they can occur also in a structured way where you can use this information and learn something from that. So I'm going to go quickly about the features I'm intending to use. So first of all, I want to use stereo features in combination with ego motion to get a local three-dimensional map and accumulate this over time. So we're here at IV. I think tomorrow we have a presentation about our ego motion algorithm, and the code is going to be soon available online if you're interested. We also developed a very efficient and large-scale stereometer, which should be probably also available online in a couple of months. Second, I want to use also lane markings, as you can see here, but they are only reliable features when you can clearly see them. As a third feature, I want to incorporate I call it object flow. So it's basically scene flow. So Dr. Franke, you probably are an expert on that. So this is a descriptor on scene flow where you can, for example, here in a bird's eye perspective, you see moving vehicles, and these are the vector fields generated from that. And you want to describe them in some way to get some information out of that. So you get a pretty precise estimate of your road geometry just by looking on these vector fields up to a distance of 40 meters, let's say. And I also want to incorporate object detection. So this is a preliminary result on object detections using a state-of-the-art object detector. Here I used the Felsenschwalb object detector, which won the Pascal 08 challenge, in combination with a stereo method to increase recall and precision. So the remaining question is also to how to combine all these features in a principled manner. And I want to use a generative probabilistic approach here. So here you can see, I won't go into details due to time, but here you can see a graphical model using a conventional plate notation where you have a prior of a street orientations and object flow observations drawn from that. And then you can do inference with this model and you can learn the model parameters. So what you can also do with such a model is you can sample from them. And here are some samples drawn from this model. As you can see, these are only free arm intersections, right? So there's no model selection involved at this point here. But as you can see, this model captured pretty well the structure of typical free arm intersection streets. And this model can be used for inference also. So these are very preliminary results here, which are yet unpublished. So here are some data extracted from, so sparse scene flow basically extracted from real stereo sequences. So this is an example image from exactly this sequence. And this is the posterior mean of the samples, of the sampling process. So in this model, you can just employ some standard sampling procedures like, so here I used a combination of block-Gibbs sampling and metropolis hasting. And then you get a geometry out of this like that. And this is back projected into the image. And I hope by using more features, I can make this even more precise, add the number of lanes also here, and have a better estimate at the vicinity of a car. And here's another example. I mean, you can already see where this model is going to fail here using the flow features only, which is estimating the streets of the number of streets in this example, since if you don't have flow vectors here or here, this doesn't mean that there's no street. So here you really want to include also information about your geometry and other features, like lane markings. So yeah, as I already said, I want to incorporate this and other features also. And I think also very important is the outlier handling, since this poses severe problems to these processes for inference. And one main question to answer is this question on transdimensional models. So the question of model selection. And I'm going to look into two different methods for doing that, which are Bayesian non-parametric methods, like Dirichlet processes, and also reversible jump Markov chain Monte Carlo methods, which extend Markov chain Monte Carlo methods to handle the multi-parameter case, basically. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm open to questions.
Standard question, do you expect to calculate this in real time for?
Well, I mean, this depends a lot on the features used. I mean, if you want to do it in real time, all your features have to be done in real time, right?
Really?
So yeah, I intend to do part of it in real time, like perhaps a smaller system. And for sampling, this is also an issue. I mean, you can do sampling. You can run multiple Markov chains in parallel on GPU, for example.
Yeah.
And you can also do variational inference, which is a bit harder on it mathematically, but you could also do this. So we are trying to have a look into that.
But you're not decades away from realistic implementation.
Decades away?
No, no.
You mean
for some features you can do this? That's your opinion.
Well, yeah. So the inference processes. So for only these flow features is actually very fast. So a simple MATLAB implementation just takes about 2 seconds for this inference. But like our stereo currently runs only at about 3 frames per second on a single CPU. But I mean, we are intending to put this on CUDA too, and also the other features. So it's not decades away.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've gone more or less mostly through, but we're a little bit behind schedule, so we're going to try to keep things going, and I think we're going to limit ourselves to one question after each one. So the next person to speak is Lily Huang from University of California, Riverside. Oh, Riverside.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Mars for letting me stand here and present my dissertation. I'm Lily Huang from UC Riverside. I'm working with Dr. Bars, and I'm from CSERT. The topic of my dissertation is LiDAR, camera, and inertial sensors-based navigation and positioning techniques for advanced ITS applications. So from this title, you can see we use several kinds of sensors, LiDAR and camera and inertial sensors. Okay, the first step of my dissertation, at first I want to use LiDAR for navigation. Let me show you this page. Our purpose is, in intelligent transportation, in ITS applications, we want to know what happened around us. We want to know the landmarkers. We want to know the position and acceleration of cars in front of cars or behind us. So first of all, I want to use LiDAR for this purpose. I don't know how many of you have used LiDAR before. A LiDAR sensor gives you the positioning and the angle of an object, and the feedback is some distance points. It has some advantages such as a high accuracy and a wide area view and low data processing requirement. So this, I think the most disadvantage is it's too expensive. But however, for LiDAR, the reliability depends on the distance. And for LiDAR, you don't know what your gate is. You get several points, but you don't know what it is. So we need to use the other sensors to help you. I want to show you some LiDAR results. See the left images. I did this experiment in our parking lot. So you can see we get some cars in our parking lot. This is in the parking lot, so we know what we detect are cars. But in fact, if you drive your car on the road, you may get the buildings, the pedestrians, and whatever you get. So you got some points. You guess they are cars, but you cannot make sure. The right column, here I give you some error bound of the LiDAR measurements, chromal band and MSE band. With when the distance increases, you can see the error bound, and this is with the noise level. Anyway, look at this picture. From LiDAR, you can get some rough idea of where the cars are or where the objects are, but you cannot make sure it's a car or something else. So LiDAR itself is not enough. We need to use the other sensors to help you. Okay, I believe the most common sensor we use is camera. Here in CSERT, we have, look at this car. This is our Dodge Mobile car. We have two LiDAR here. This one and this one, they are Alaska ST LiDAR. And we have a camera here. I don't know whether you can see it. So now we have two LiDARs and one camera. We want to use this together to give you some basic idea of where objects are and what the object it is. So first step is to do some calibration, because for LiDAR you have LiDAR coordinate, and for camera you have camera coordinate. If you want to integrate these two kind of sensors together, you need to calibrate the two sensors. I can show you some calibration results. So we did this experiment in our parking lot. Look at those blue dots. They are, we collected the LiDAR points and mapped it in the image. This is a calibration result. Oh, I forgot to mention that the main contribution of this research is that I know there are a lot of papers talking about calibration, but they use camera and one plane LiDAR. Here we use Alaska ST. That's a 4-plane LiDAR. That's not 3D plane. That's not 3D LiDAR. That's not one planet. That's a 4-plane. So it's very difficult to calibrate it. That's the main contribution of this part. So after After calibration, we can do some integration of LiDAR and camera for vehicle detection and tracking. Here we have inputs from LiDAR and camera, and we can the basic approach is we use LiDAR to give you some distance information like this. We know here at the 52 meters we have one object. It might be an object or it might be some noise because you have only one point. You don't know whether there is an object or not. So we look at the image. From image we can get, here at 52 meters, we use ADABUST. We see, there's a car. So this is a detection result. And here, here we have several LiDAR points here. And we also search it in the image, and we know, this is a trash can. This is not a car. We fail to detect a vehicle here because this is too far away. This is 90. I remember it's 98 meters. That's too far away. So the image processing fails to tell you this is a car. But in most cases, LiDAR and computer vision can tell you where the objects are and whether it's a car or not. We have talked about LiDAR and camera. It gives you some basic ideas of what the objects around you are, but it cannot tell you where you are. If you can get some information of where you are and the relative positioning between yourself and the vehicles in front of you, then you can draw a digital map. So this is a project we are working on. In this project, we are using LiDAR and inertial sensors for positioning. The LiDAR gives you some measurement like distance and bearing, while the inertial sensors give you acceleration of yourself and the angular velocities. And here in this project, we detected posts and walls. Posts are detected as point features, and walls are detected as line features. So from these two kind of features, suppose the positioning of the features are known in real world. From the detection of LiDAR and inertial sensors, we can know where you are. We are still working on that project. The maths are all done. We are doing some simulations now. The last part of my dissertation is vehicle tracking based on feature and color probability. In my previous work, I'm using LiDAR and camera or LiDAR and inertial sensors. In this research, we use just the camera. Just use a camera for vehicle detection in occlusion cases. So in this research, we use feature tracking to get an estimation of the objects, and we use a color probability model to detect the occlusion area and to see which object each pixel belongs to. To summarize my research, I use multiple sensors in navigation, such as LiDAR and the camera, and the LiDAR and computer vision. I believe that by integrating multiple sensors, you can get better navigation results, both for better surrounding vehicles, and you can locate your own positions. That's it. Thank you.
So if we have any questions?
You have to calibrate camera and the LiDAR.
Yeah.
Why is it so difficult to calibrate this sensor since it had 4 beams? If you take a Velodyne, it has 64 beams.
For 3D LiDAR, you can detect a plane, right? Then it will be much more easier for calibration. But for a 4-plane LiDAR, it's not so easy to estimate. Estimate the orientation of the plane because you have only 4-plane detection results. So I tried some 3D calibration method to our 4-plane LiDAR, and it works half-half. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it does not work. So that's the difficulty. Yeah. So for 3D, you can use the same method as camera calibration, so that will be easier.
Thank you. So next we have also from UCR, Hanvu.
Hello, my name is An, and the title of my presentation is Vehicle Segmentation and Tracking for Monocular Vehicles, and I'm working under Matt Bart at UCR. So this is the outline of my presentation. First, I'm going to give an introduction and the motivation behind the work, and then I'm going to describe a new driver-aided vision sensors which we have developed. Next, I will give a brief overview of an integrated navigation system which we are working on, and finally, I will describe a vehicle tracking framework for a stationary vision sensors as well as vision sensor under motions, which integrates the work from the vision sensor sections and the integrated navigation system section. So what we want to achieve is to obtain a better traffic information by integrating a number of traffic sensing sensors such as embedded loop sensors, surveillance cameras, and pro-vehicle data, mainly from cameras, as you can see here, because it provides us with data that we can use to obtain vehicle trajectory, analyze flow density speed, as well as detect traffic incidents. So the visual sensor that we've developed is to use in driver-aided system is this sensor right here, which combines two catadioptric vision sensor along an collinear optical axis. The top one is a hyperbolic mirror, which gives us 360-degree view of the surrounding. And the bottom one is a rectifying mirror, which allows us to look at markings and features on the ground plane. And the two views can be combined or can be processed independently. Like the hyperbolic mirror views can be used to do vehicle classification, whereas the rectifying mirror view can be used to identify lane markings and looking at potholes and things like that. And for the integrated navigation system, traditionally, the integrated navigation system uses an IMU and a GPS, which you can see over here. These systems work well under suburbans and rural areas, but they don't work very well under urban areas. So what we want to do is to integrate a few of these other sensors to use a measurement to aid the integrated navigation system. So the sensors that we propose to integrate is like LiDAR vision and radio frequency data. Like if you have digital data in FM subcarrier, HD radio, digital television, then you can integrate those to use like pseudo lights from GPS to basically increase the accuracy, availability, continuity, and the integrity of the system. And what we use is an extended common filter to basically integrate these systems. As you can see over here, the measurements are processed asynchronously, and they basically help you correct the system. So the next thing is vision, the vehicle tracking framework for stationary vision sensors. So there's 3 steps. The first one, you have to calibrate the vision sensors to obtain internal and external parameters. The second step is to segment the vehicles, which we use in genetic algorithms to parameterize the vehicles and its type, its features, and things like that. And the third step is to track the vehicles, which we use a particle filter to basically track features on the image and hypothesize to obtain vehicles pose. You can't really see very well, but the augmented rectangular cuboid is drawn over the vehicles, and the X and Y, as well as the heading of the vehicles, are displayed on the image. And this is a tracking result for a few of the vehicles we track. So if you want to implement this system on a pro vehicles, you have to first use the integrated navigation sensors and calibrate the rotation and translations from the body frame to the vision sensors. That's the first step, and then for the second step, it's pretty much almost the same as the previous one, except that we use a vehicle classification process to identify vehicle candidates instead of using like background subtraction as we did before. And for the third step, we have to basically integrate the eco motion of the vehicles together with the tracking result. I mean the trackers. And expected contribution is just pretty much like before. We expect a new vision sensor as a driver's aid, an integrated navigation system which provide continuity, integrity, accuracy, and availabilities, and a vehicle tracking system for both static and an extension of that tracking system for pro vehicles. That's it.
Just a short question. Where do you plan to mount this catalopic sensor?
We have, and you can see it on the...
I overlooked that. You can't go back, sorry.
Oh.
Huh?
Wait. Over here. This is the image coming from that carrier-optic vision sensor that we did.
Yeah, is it on the roof? Above the roof, above the car?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Next up, we have Rohit Kumar from Boston University.
Hi, my name is Rohit Kumar. I'm from Boston University, and I work with Professor David Castanian. And I'm working on modeling and tracking of public transport and urban environment. So I was thinking of how to motivate, and then when I came to the conference, the best motivation was I got it from here. You already have heard a lot of statistic of how many people die in road accidents. So the best solution is use public transport as much as possible. It will save a lot of time and effort for all of us. So let me go ahead with this. This is going to be the outline for my talk. I'm going to explain the problem, the proposed models, estimation algorithms, and the new stuff. Actually, models are also new. How do we do this in a constrained communication environment? So one of the main things that drives people away from using public transport is the wait time. You may be waiting in the rain, or you don't know whether the bus has just gone by. I think this was a study done in Netherlands, where they came out with a theory that perceived wait time is not necessarily the wait time. The perceived wait time actually drives people away from using the public transport. If you have some information as it is done here, I think this is from California itself, and Professor Dan's group at Washington also have done a lot of work. If you know how much time will it take for next bus to arrive, you are still a little more satisfied than to just go to the bus stop and wait infinitely. So but the perceived wait times is a key component. With this PhD, we basically want to address some of the issues which hamper the implementation of ATIS, which is Advanced Traveler Information System. And one more thing before I go further, I apologize for the formatting issues. The slides were made on Mac, OpenOffice, and then transferred here, so some stuff happens in the middle. In this PhD, we are basically working on modeling and estimation part of the system, and how do we deal with if you have constrained communications. Just to go back, the way ATIS basically works is you have a GPS receiver on the bus with a transmitter. As the bus moves, the bus transmits its location information through the transmission towers to the base station. And the base station uses some predictor algorithms to estimate the time of arrivals for rest of the stops on the itinerary, and gives the user the information of when the next bus will arrive. So first thing is we propose some new models for the roads. The current literature, what they use is they basically use each road is modeled with the same, each link or the road is modeled with the same model. And what we propose is each road has a different dynamic condition, and we should model each road with a different model, which basically means is each road has its own average velocity, each road has different congestion, different environment condition. So the way we model is our state variable is going to be link dependent, our observation is going to be link dependent, and the state is basically a function of the link where it is. For each link, we assume there is an average velocity and process noise, and this is basically modeled with the Ornstein-Offenbach process. And if you look at this picture, you may be entering the link with any different velocity, and what we propose is once you come on the link, you basically are hovering somewhere around the average velocity. The next thing is once we have these models, the next key thing is how do we estimate what type of estimation algorithm will be required, what is the problem. The problem mainly comes around, okay, this is misplaced now, is actually around the corners. When you are on one link, you are fine, but when you are around the corners, the problem comes in the prediction step of the estimation algorithm, because you don't know how long are you going to be on this link, when the link changes, what is the distribution on the other side. The problem is basically because of changing the dynamical system around the corner. And so the challenges are the switching time from one link to another is unknown. It is difficult to perform the prediction step, and this type of system basically reminds everybody probably with the hybrid systems. But the main difference is the switching time is not random. It is dependent on the state. If I'm at the corner, then only the switching will happen. Otherwise, I'll remain on the same link. So we propose a multi-scale algorithm, which the way it works is, suppose I'm at a position A and I'm on link 1. I do a prediction step. If I land on the link L1 itself, I perform the regular prediction algorithm and the system works as usual. But if I'm at step D, I perform the prediction step and it takes me on the link 2. There is a change in link. So rather than performing a one-step prediction step, we basically go in small steps. And I don't see, okay. So basically we take smaller steps. I apologize, somehow the small steps are not shown here. So you basically take small steps and check whether my link has changed or not. Once you take 1, 2, 3, and when the link is changed, you change the dynamical system, and then you perform the prediction step. Now, if we have to embed this into the standard algorithms, okay, now it is coming. For extended Kalman filter, since if when you are around the corner, if you take multiple steps or one step, it is the same thing. So we basically calculate the time to the corner and then perform one step, and the second step is on the remaining time. We basically keep the same time step. For the particle filter, you have a set of particles at a given point of time. You take each particle and predict it through this multi-scale prediction algorithm, and then you get the final state of the particle at the next time step. The next thing is we want to do this in a communication constrained environment where we moved some of the computation. Earlier, the bus was basically taking the observation and sending it to the base station. We moved some of the computation from base station to the bus, where the bus will process the information and only transmit when it is required. Based on this, we have three types of communication protocols, which is push protocol, which will be implemented at the bus, pull protocol when the base station basically calls for the information, or push or pull protocol, which are working in tandem. For the push protocols, I have some results. You basically have to come up with a strategy of transmission so that the information which is available at the bus and which is available at the base station, you want to minimize that information subject to some communication constraints, which is you want to reduce the number of communication to the base station. There are three types of protocols that can be in the push category. One is parametric approach, when the bus basically decides to communicate based on a particular threshold, or a fixed horizon wherein you look for a fixed time steps into the future and then you decide to protocol, or a receding horizon, which is you basically learn every time you make an observation and then decide to transmit. Some simulation results, we find that with this, just to let people know the KL distance, the smaller the KL distance, the better it is. That means it is matching the distribution exactly. And we find that with the receding horizon, the number is 0.2, which is pretty close to 0. And we have done this for if original communications were 60, this is almost 1/8. We used only 8 communication in this simulations. I can actually skip this, and the conclusions of this talk is we probably have enhanced tracking. This is currently in simulation results only. We have not tested it on real-time systems. We have nonlinear estimation algorithms, which will help to have more complicated, more complex models to model traffic. These things, if you have constrained environment, this basically shows that probably we can try it out in V2V or a cognitive radio framework where communication is more probabilistic and it is not guaranteed. I would like to thank you and have any feedback.
So one question, please.
Okay, one question.
Yeah.
Have you tried this with any actual bus data? Well, one question and a half.
Yeah.
With any actual bus data, and you depend heavily upon your link speeds or delays or whatever you're calling them.
Yeah.
How do you get those?
So first answer is no, this is just still in simulations. And the second thing is we learn the link characteristics based on history or the other buses that have gone on that link, but this is part of the state as well, where we learn it real time as the bus travels.
Well, as a warning, when we did this many years ago, we tried to learn it. It takes about 3 months to learn the speeds on all the links, and a typical transit agency changes their schedule every 3 months.
Okay, I'll keep
so
that.
be warned.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Robin Schubert from, I don't know how to say this, so thank you.
So we're getting closer to the reception, but before it comes to that, I would like to present the research work that I've done as part of my PhD studies. But unfortunately, I can only see a black screen. Pardon? Okay, then just wait some seconds. Thank you. Okay, so my name is Robin Schubert from Chemnitz University in Germany, and the title of my presentation today is Unified View on Probabilistic Tracking and Situation Assessment. And we have heard from several of the previous speakers that for advanced driver assistance systems, a good and reliable perception of the vehicle's environment is very important. But apart from that, we also need to interpret what we see around our vehicle. So we need to know what does it mean if we have two vehicles with a certain relative velocity. Does it mean that the second vehicle will do a braking maneuver, or does it mean that it will do a lane change or something like that? So we need to interpret and determine the relationships between the objects that we have seen in the tracking. And my work is dealing with the relationships between those two tasks, so between tracking and situation assessment. And to be more precise, the thesis has a theoretical and a practical objective. And the theoretical objective is to develop an interface between probabilistic tracking algorithms and situation assessments, more precisely between Bayes filters and Bayesian networks. And that interface should be developed in two directions. So first, I would like to investigate how we can use the uncertainties that we get from the tracking modules, so in the easiest case, the covariance matrices, how we can use that uncertainties directly in Bayesian networks. So the aim is that the inference that we do in Bayesian networks, or the decisions that we take there, are directly influenced by the uncertainty of the tracking modules. This is part one. And the second question is now the other way around. If we have some situational knowledge, for example, we know that next to our ego vehicle on the left side there's another vehicle, how can we exploit that situational knowledge to improve the tracking? For example, we could, in that situation, reduce the probability that our ego vehicle will move to the left. The practical part of the work was to implement an example application for determining lane change maneuver recommendations on highways. I would like to present to you that application first and the theory after that. So you will see a video where you will see the images of two cameras, one pointing in driving direction and one the opposite direction. And in that images you will see detected lanes, detected vehicles, and the color encodes the let's say, criticality that is associated with that vehicle. So green means it's not relevant for the application, red means it's safety critical, and yellow means it's neither one or the other. So let's start with that one. So you will see here as a traffic sign at the top of the video the recommendation that is given to the driver. For example, now we have a vehicle which is overtaking us, and if it leaves, now we are recommended to change the lane to the left, because there's a vehicle in front of us. And now there's a vehicle approaching from behind, and if it enters the sensor field of view, then the recommendation is changed to keep lane. So that's actually a typical situation assessment task. So we have an environmental perception based on vision and radar sensors, and we need to derive a decision on that. Should we change the lane or not? That's here the application. Now, what is proposed in the thesis are two things. I already told you that the first question is how can we use uncertainty from tracking modules in Bayesian networks. So normally what you do in Bayesian networks is that you specify the random variables that you are using, and you specify the dependencies between those random variables in terms of conditional probability tables. And normally you do that in advance before running your system. So you do it in your lab at design time. And what is proposed in the thesis is to make those conditional probability tables adaptive. That means to change them at runtime. So, for example, we have here just a part of the network. We have here the status of a lane, which can be dangerous, free, or occupied, and we have some kind of distance measure to the closest vehicle that we see. I don't want to go into detail what this distance measure is, but for example, in an expert system, we would just say if that value exceeds 5, then it's considered dangerous. And in a classical Bayesian network, we would define some kind of likelihood function for that, which is static. And now the idea is to use the variance that we get from the tracking modules for that distance value. So assume that from the tracking we get not only an expectation value, but also a variance in the easiest case, to use that for the likelihood function. For example, if the tracking module is very confident in the distance measure, then we get a sharp likelihood function than this. And if the tracking module is not so confident and the variance is very high, then this likelihood function is significantly changed. So that means that if the variance of the tracking module changes, then also directly the inference in the Bayesian network is influenced. And this is passed through the entire processing steps until we reach the decision nodes and we are able to determine if a lane change or keeping lane maneuver is appropriate. So this is part one. The second question was how can we exploit situational knowledge for improving the tracking performance? And here what is proposed is an extension of the well-known interacting multiple model filter. An interacting multiple model filter, the IMM, normally defines a set of maneuvers for a vehicle. For example, a vehicle could stay on this lane, keep lane, brake, accelerate, things like that. And you define transition probabilities between those maneuvers. For example, you say that if you're in the state keep lane, then you have a 90% probability that you will stay in that state. And also here, this probability, those transition probabilities are static at the state of the art. That means that you define them at design time, and when you run your system, they will not change. And the idea here is to make that matrix here adaptive. That means that if we have here the transition probability matrix, which is used in the IMM, we could also model that as part of a Bayesian network, where we have some causes which influence that probabilities, and we have possibly some effects. So this is a very abstract representation. But the idea is that if we have any situational knowledge, then the Bayesian network will, through probabilistic inference, determine an updated transition probability matrix. So just as an example, if you have a vehicle which is just next to you on the left side, you could probably decrease the transition probability to the state change left, because it's unlikely that your vehicle will make a lane change maneuver to left unless you're a suicide driver or something like that. So those are, in a nutshell, the propositions of the thesis. I would like to draw your attention to a presentation that I'm going to give on Wednesday, and the session WEED1, where I can go a little bit more into detail about how tracking modules can directly influence situation assessment. Okay, with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy for your questions and your feedback.
Have you any practical numbers how much this improved technology improves the results of tracking?
Yes, I do. I've done on that last paper which was mentioned here from the Fusion conference last year, I did a very simple application of that approach where I just said I have some lane markings which can be dashed or solid, and I have a classifier telling me if it's the lane marking is dashed or solid, and then if the lane marking is solid, I decrease the probability that the vehicle will cross this lane marking. And we can see there in those results, which are field test results, that the false alarm rate of the IMM, so the rate with which it determines a wrong maneuver, decreases. So it's a very simple example, but in that Fusion paper, I have some results for that, yes.
Do you any parameter tuning with this approach, or is it all self-tuning?
No, as most of tracking and situation assessment approaches is unfortunately not self-tuning. Yes. We do have some activities in parallel to that work dealing with the problem of optimization of tracking parameters, but I would say that this is a completely different problem. It's very important to solve that, but this is not part of that work, but we are dealing with that.
Okay.
So this is all hand-tuned. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got now down to the last one, and we have Daman Sobkush. No, close. From George Washington, excuse me, George Washington University.
Even I hate myself for talking now, which is, I'm sorry, it's the wrong file. It's the wrong file. Can you? I'm Daman Soodbakhsh, and I'm a PhD candidate in the George Washington University. My dissertation is about the trajectory optimization of vehicle evasive maneuvers. First, I'm going to give you some introduction of my work, and then the vehicle model that I developed for it, and then results, some conclusions, and then the future work that I'm going to do. Significant of the work and the background for that is if we look at the accident data and the FARS data, we can see that about 34% of all road fatalities are road departures. And if we include all type of road and lane departures, this number will add up to 53%. Many systems have been developed to reduce these numbers of fatalities, and examples of that are vehicle steering control, and there are vehicle steering control systems for helping drivers. Lane keeping systems are already in some vehicles, and my project is more for automated trajectory following or performing more evasive maneuver, and hopefully to even use it as a driver assist. If we do it as autonomous, we can have more road capacity. And here we can see the example that subject vehicle is the blue one, which is about to pass the stationary vehicle, yellow one. For doing that, we need to have a vehicle model. First, I developed a simple vehicle model known as bicycle model. If we combine left and right wheels of the vehicle and represent them with one wheel, and then we have this here front steering car. Delta is the steering angle, psi is the yaw angle, and capital X and Y are the global coordinate systems, and we have the local coordinate system with the small letters X and Y. I developed the model in the MATLAB Simulink, but I didn't show the equations. I assume that we want to perform the maneuver in certain time because of the sensor that we have. We'll have the data in for a certain time. And to have the final condition with zero steering angle and zero yaw angle, so the vehicle will be in the straight line, straight in the lane. And the object is to perform the maneuver with minimum lateral acceleration. The reason for choosing minimizing lateral acceleration is it directly affects the driver's feeling of comfort, and also nonlinearities in the model will go higher, and we can't predict all the nonlinearities. I formulated a problem with just performance index that is shown there. and then solve it numerically using collocation technique. Here we can see that the result from the, it's a resultant lateral acceleration profile in comparing to two other known good trajectories for this kind of maneuvers. One is the fifth order polynomial that is known as the best kind of analytical representation of the work, and also the trapezoidal acceleration profile, which was introduced for the automated highways. And in that one, it's I don't know if it's working or. Okay, the black one is the trapezoidal acceleration profile. The red is the fifth order polynomial, and the resultant acceleration of our trajectory optimization is shown with blue. As you can see, the lateral acceleration is lower using this method. However, it came up with the expense of not having the lateral acceleration 0 at the end. Here you can see that the three trajectories, again with the same colors. And in the bottom, you can see that yaw rate is not 0 at the end of this trajectory. And on the right-hand side, you can see that yaw angle, which is 0. As I said, we wanted the vehicle to be in the straight in the lane. In comparing to the human drivers, there was a study was done in Japan in 1977 to perform evasive maneuvers. And if we compare the steering, this is the steering input from the expert drivers or experienced drivers, and this is the steering input from our system. And if we put them on top of each other, we can see that the system was able to perform the maneuver with less steering. And then, as I said, the trajectories that I showed you were only mathematical. So we want to have them with the controller, because our system controls the vehicle too. And if we inputted those trajectories to, for example, PID controller, LQR, or a sliding mode controller, and then compare the resultant system performance to our system, we want to go from there to have a driver assist to see which one is a better trajectory. If we want to do it with this method, direct trajectory optimization, or we prefer to use, for example, a trapezoidal acceleration profile with a sliding mode controller. So the resultant trajectory we have lower lateral acceleration profile than the other trajectories, and lower lateral acceleration enable the controller to perform more evasive maneuver, and we can perform the maneuver in a certain coefficient of friction in a shorter time and distance. The future, I'm going to add more nonlinearities and more nonlinearity to the system, and also model roll of the vehicle, roll motion of the vehicle and the four wheels, and then use the system as a driver assist in a car simulator, and see if the vehicle if the drivers like the system or not. Thank you, and I appreciate if you can give me some comments.
Yeah, for one first question, what advantages do you expect from the sliding mode controller compared to LQR controller? What advantages do you expect from a sliding mode controller compared to the others?
I'm not using a sliding mode controller, but for a sliding mode controller, we can have nonlinearities in the system, where in the PID or LQR, we need to have a linearized system.
If I understood you correctly, you want to realize a comfortable driving, but the derivative of your acceleration is large at some points, and people are very sensitive for that.
So where?
the beginning and the end, you hit jerks. At 0.05 seconds and at 1.55 seconds, the acceleration is, if you take the derivative, at the beginning, at the end of the maneuver, people will not be happy with this corners.
The jerk?
The jerk.
Yes, actually, I wanted to have the same amount of jerk allowed in the lateral acceleration between these two, between trapezoidal acceleration profile and what I have, and then compare them. So it's just a little different from the trapezoidal, but overall, it's very close to the jerk that is input to the trapezoidal acceleration profile here. So the comparison is, I think, fair between these.
Could you imagine to put a penalty on jerk into your optimization tool?
I did, yes. That's why I limited that to this amount, but I can limit it more.
Okay. So now we've completed everything. I just want to thank everybody for sitting through. I know it was a long one, but I appreciate everybody. And let's just give one more hand to all the presenters. I think they did a fine job. Also, we want to give a nice round of applause for our distinguished jury here who sat through after a long day, and we really appreciate all the work that you've done, so let's give them a hand again. And in addition to that, we have some nice gifts for you, or maybe nice gifts.